Hey, you guys, welcome back to In the Wild. I'm Rayshawn, and today's episode is going to be an interesting one because it's out of my wheelhouse. But I'm confident with our next guest because they're going to walk me through inside the world of politics a little bit, or at least at the local level. So we have Mr. Deke Copenhaver, who is the former mayor of the city of Augusta from 2005 to 2014. And through his time, I want to say he done a lot for the city. And through that, he now does a lot of different things to keep folks just socially active and active at the grassroots level. And you'll hear him talk about that a lot. So I'm excited to chat with him to see a little bit about his experience as an alum, but also as the former mayor, and just how we can take some of his experiences and lessons learned into how we can be more active and just politically conscious, I think. So here we go. Welcome, Deke, to In the Wild. We're super excited to have you here.
Man, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Yes, very, very excited. But for those who are unfamiliar, do you mind just introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your connection to Augusta University?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I graduated from Augusta University in '91 with a degree in political science, which I thought I'd never use. Then moved to Atlanta and was in banking. Moved to South Carolina, was in real estate and development. Came back here and was mayor for 9 years. So I'm a proud Jaguar, but I just love being back on campus.
Yes, and we love having you back. What were some of your favorite memories as a student during that time? Because you were telling me that it was still Augusta College at the
It
time.
was still Augusta College at the time.
Yeah, what were some of your favorite memories?
You know, I think one of my favorites is Ralph Walker, who was a legendary political science professor, had such an impact on me. And I remember, I was telling somebody this yesterday, I just actually went on the board of the Forward Party, which is a third party that's been started at national level. But I remember him telling me, as a candidate, when I never thought I would run for office, he said, you need to not be too highbrow or lowbrow. And so I didn't think I was going to use that, but after I was elected mayor, I got to thank him for that.
That's really cool. And campus has physically changed quite a bit
It
since
certainly
then.
has.
What do you think of how campus looks these days?
I think it looks great. I think it's getting to feel, it feels more like a real college campus than it did when I was here. I was also on the foundation board for about 9 or 10 years, I think. So got to be a part of some of these buildings getting built.
That's really cool. Were you involved in any particular student organizations, especially I guess that kind of tie back to your political science degree or anything?
You know, I really wasn't. I will tell you, I was just, at that point in my college career, I kept my head down and was just trying to get out of school. You know, my illustrious college career was not always great from an academic standpoint, but no, I tell you, I love it. And I went to the University of Georgia. So I was 17 years old. I should have started, I think, at a smaller school, because when you're 17 and you're going, and there's 300 students in the class, it's like, well, nobody's going to miss me. But I got so much out of going here due to these smaller class sizes. I think I'd never, in however many years, I never missed a class. But
Oh, wow.
I enjoyed the learning atmosphere of what was then Augusta College, now, Augusta University.
I love that. And I love that even as the university has grown, we've still been able to keep those small class sizes and that
Yeah.
connection with your professor as a student to really kind of help still teach and mold you and help you
Yeah.
still be who you need to be by the time you leave.
Well, somebody was asking me, actually, what is the value of a college education these days? Because not everybody, needs one or anything. But I said nothing. I spoke at Georgia College to their leadership program earlier this year. To me, it's just learning how to deal with people from different walks of life. I'm like, you can't really do that on Zoom. So that social interaction is really key. I mean, it's, that made a difference in my career. But I think, there's a place for Zoom and all that. But I think in-person conversations like we're having, nothing will ever take the place of that.
Right. Yeah, in the world that we live in, digital or doing things more digitally it's definitely more popular, but it
Yeah.
doesn't always beat just having an in-person conversation.
No, and it's I had an interesting conversation with somebody recently that said, "Well, AI is going to take over the world," and I was like, "No, it's not." They said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because you can't program the soul. As good as it gets, it's still, the human voice and interaction between people is very, very important."
Right. I 100% agree. Like, especially in the field that I work in communications and marketing, a lot of people will say like, "Oh yeah, now you can just have AI just programmed to do certain things," and I'm like, it still won't beat out some of the human creativity that we're able to provide.
No, it never will. And I just, it's an interesting technology, scary technology to a degree in some ways, but I still, the power of the human voice and like, I love, I do a lot of keynote speaking, but just that connection with your audience, you can't really get that, if you're not in person.
Right. So how did you, I guess, just transition into being interested in politics?
Well, I was always interested in it, being a political science major. But one of the things I thought was, to change the system, you're going to need a revolution. But when the opportunity came to run for mayor, I'd been in a program called Leadership Georgia, where we traveled all over the state for a year in 2004 and looked at what communities were doing good, what the challenges were. But every place I went, Augusta had a very bad reputation for our local politics.
Oh
People
wow.
would say, "What's wrong with Augusta politics?" and all. So my third local current or former elected official, when I graduated from Leadership Georgia in November of 2004, went under indictment. And so this guy that was on the board of Leadership Georgia said, "What are you guys putting in the water up there?" So I'm 37 years old and I'm like, "Man, we need a change. We need new leadership. And if a position comes available, I'm going to run for it." So our former mayor, Bob Young, became Southeast Regional Director for Housing and Urban Development. So I just threw my name out there, and I was not aware I was supposed to go kiss people's rings and ask permission. So I just did it because I felt like we needed new leadership, and the people responded to it.
I guess I'm just curious to hear, like, what was it like knowing that just the people of the city wanted you to be the mayor? What was it like when you found out that you won the election?
It was really cool, but I have always had a passion for grassroots engagement. So I ran the Central Savannah River Land Trust for 4 years before becoming mayor and handled the green space program for the city. But so I had been out there engaging with people at the grassroots level for years. So I heard people saying we need new, younger leadership. So I think so often politicians get in a little bubble or in a silo and they're not engaging with the actual man on the street. So it felt good. And I will tell you this, Rayshawn. So I was the only candidate going into the general election in 2005 to not have a single endorsement. And so I was like, look, all I care about is the endorsement of the people. And so, the people endorsed me in a runoff that year with 56%, and then won the next year. That was to fulfill an unexpired term. So I ran '05, '06, and 10, and so won with an average of 62% of the vote. Not being a politician, not focusing on serving special interest groups or political parties, but actually focused on serving the people.
And so I wasn't here in Augusta quite yet while you had your tenure as mayor. So I'm also curious to know, like, what were some of the challenges that you experienced as mayor during that time?
I'll tell you, there are a lot of them, but one of the things that I couldn't figure out was when I was first elected, I'm like, there are people that hate me that don't know me. But they painted me with the broad brush of, well, typical politician. We don't really know who he is, but he must be a politician. But after 9 years of engaging at the grassroots level, people had gotten to know me. So when I left office, our former mayor, Hardy Davis, who ran after me, did a poll and it polled on my approval rating. So after 9 years, my approval rating was 72%. So, I don't think that's a lot of politicians that can say that. But no, it feels great. But I was telling somebody recently that people said, well, your job's thankless. And I said, no, it's not, because I'm out there, I'm going to the Y every morning, still do. I'm going to Lowe's on the weekend. So every day I would have somebody while I was in office thank me for the job I was doing. And still 10 years out of office, I still have people saying thank you and all this. So if you lead through love and compassion, that's sustainable.
Are there any achievements during your tenure that make you the most proud?
There are a lot. Laney Walker Bethlehem Redevelopment Initiative, so revitalizing that part of the city, that I'm very proud of. We built the convention center, the law enforcement center, the new judicial center, the new library. Proud of all that. But one of the things that people say I'm known for was bringing the community together. My first day in office, we started a prayer breakfast, non-denominational, open to everybody. 19 years later, we're still doing that. So to focus on healing the racial divide in our community was a huge focus of mine. And I think, at the grassroots level, it's like we just had the Augusta Stronger Together campaign to get our mayor a vote, which I ran. So that passed with 74% of the vote. But so it was an opportunity to continue with that grassroots engagement. But just knowing that people smiling and saying, well, a lot of people say, I wish you'd come back and be mayor again. But I think that was the season. But no, it's just, I love people, and being able to make people's lives a little easier is what I was focused on doing.
I love that. And I love that you are still very active in the community, just doing the things that you're passionate about.
I am. I'm very active at the national level with a bunch of other organizations too. Wrote a best-selling book several years ago. But really, it's that grassroots. I want to take what we've been able to do in Augusta. So on that one issue campaign, to get anything to pass in the political climate we're in was 74% of the vote. But the campaign was inclusive, positive, uplifting, and we did outreach, grassroots, to all sectors of the community. So we brought citizens together on common ground around a positive campaign. And I've always said, people will go to an alternative to negative, toxic politics as usual if you provide them with one. I did that 3 runs for office and mayor, and recently with this. But if we can do it in Augusta, I want to show other communities how to do it.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned your book, do you mind telling our listeners your book, but also the publishing process?
Yeah, so it's called The Changemaker, The Art of Building Better Leaders. You can find it on Amazon, or my website is deke-copenhaver.com. But it's a book on leadership. So for 4 years for the Georgia Municipal Association that I was on the board of when I was in office, I'd written a column on leadership. So Forbes found that column and emailed me and said, would you like to write a book? And so I thought it was a joke or a scam, and I almost deleted it, but it turned out to be true. So I worked with Forbes to get it done. And it's funny though, Rayshawn, they told me, when I was in office, I was focused on governing to the middle, the majority of the people. I didn't skew to the extremes. So my publisher said, my editor said, you're really going to have to focus on, some sector of the society. And I thought, well, I didn't do that in office, and that's just not what I do. 6 months in, my editor's like, man, this is really going to appeal to a whole lot of people. So people thought it was on politics. It's on leadership. Unfortunately, people don't associate the two. But when it first came out, I did a speech for Leadership Augusta, and a young lady, she's African-American, head of the Democratic Party for Columbia County, she came up to me and she said, I love your book. My 18-year-old daughter loves your book, and you should run for mayor again or run for office again, and I'd vote for you if you ran as a Republican. I will say I'm happily independent, but that was when President Trump was still in office. So a guy that knew him, that was a huge supporter of President Trump, came up to me and he's like, I love your book. How did you? I'm like, should I tell him that the chair of the Democratic Party of Columbia County feels the same way as he is? But I've always said in leadership roles, if you want to find common ground, you sometimes have to become common ground. So knowing that my book appealed to people across the political spectrum and everything, because it was not about politics, it's about leadership.
What would you say are some of the best traits a great leader should have?
I am a Christian, I think, and I begrudge nobody else their faith tradition, but I think Jesus was the greatest servant leader of all time, and just compassion, kindness, not putting yourself on a pedestal above other people, just listening, curiosity. But all of those things, I was talking to the former CEO of Starbucks recently, who is a lifelong focuser on servant leadership. I said, what do we do in a society, particularly in politics, where those traits of a true servant leader, people try to make them out to be weakness, and they are strengths, But that is what, in humility, I think humility is a key, but I talk a lot in my book about vulnerability. So Brad Means, who's our local Channel 6 anchorman, I was doing his show, and he said, can you be vulnerable in politics? I said, oh yeah. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I was vulnerable. That's what connected me to the people. I never said I had all the answers. And if I made a mistake, I admitted I made a mistake, because nobody's perfect, but that humility and vulnerability connects you with people.
I agree. And what advice would you give to any students out there who, one, maybe a political science major,
Yeah.
but also maybe have just an interest or aspirations to get more involved in politics?
Leadership knows no age. So I mentor a young man, his name is Manu Meal. So he's 25 years old. He is the CEO of a bridging organization called Bridge USA. They're on 60 college campuses. We need to get one here. And there's Bridge Europe and Bridge Africa. But he's 25 years old and he's doing this. But it's like so many people think, well, if they're in their 20s, they just need to sit at the children's table. No, I say no. I say don't be afraid to lead, because some of it's just a leap of faith. But I mean, people will say Generation Z is lazy. They're always on their cell phones. I'm like, everybody's always on their cell phones. But I'm like, talk to my friend Manu, who spends 3 weeks out of every month on the road going to college campuses. I expect great things out of your generation, but just don't be afraid and don't feel like you have to ask permission to lead. You don't. I told you, I was taken in a back room and told, when I'm 37, you're too young, all this stuff. And I'm like, it just takes courage to lead. But I am so excited about your generation. So if you guys want to run for office, call me.
And going back to college campuses, you mentioned that you've actually gone to college campuses to talk about your book because people have been using it.
Yeah. And so it's so funny. Once you put a book out there, so University of Texas, El Paso's Student Engagement and Leadership Center put it in a program called Powerful Pages. I didn't know until I saw students there putting up pictures on Instagram holding my book. So I ended up going out there and speaking, but I just found out the other day, so two people that work for AT&T, both probably Gen Z, came walking up my driveway about getting a new cable line put in. But I went in the house and I came back out and the young man was laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing about? He goes, I just called my boss and told him I met his favorite person. I'm like, what? He goes, my boss uses your book to train people for management positions in AT&T.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm like, and this was, it was Good Friday. I'll never forget it was Good Friday, but I'm like, so it's still out there and it's still, helping people, which is really cool to think. And I think, so I got asked when I first came out with the book, what is at the core of your book? I said, it's in leadership positions. You can maintain your character integrity and treat everybody with dignity and respect and still be successful. And the guy goes, well, I don't think that's possible. But I'm like, it is. It is totally possible. So I would say for your listeners and your viewers, don't be afraid to go against the grain. If we don't rebel against the status quo, all we're going to get is the status quo.
I agree. Well, I'm enjoying the conversation so far, Deke. For those listening, don't go anywhere because we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, my name's Grant Worf and I am a financial aid counselor here with Augusta University. We are devoted to providing students with the necessary financial assistance to make their college experience both affordable and achievable. We also promote financial literacy and offer a variety of resources to help students better understand their finances. Once a student submits their FAFSA, we are then sent that information and we review it to determine their eligibility for Title IV funding. Our main office is located in Fanning Hall on the Somerville campus, And we also have an office located on the second floor of the Wellness Center on the Health Sciences campus for all of our graduate and professional health sciences students. We can be reached at 706-737-1524 or by emailing osfa@augusta.edu.
All right, welcome back, you guys, to In the Wild. We're here having a conversation with former Mayor Deke Copenhaver. And I guess just to start back, how would you define just social or political activism in 2024? What does that look like these days from your perspective?
Well, it looks like the Augusta Stronger Together campaign, because once again, it was an experiment to me. Mayor Johnson and I are really great friends. We made a great team, but we engaged at the grassroots level throughout the community. We took it as an opportunity to educate, inform, engage, and empower local voters, which is what we did. And a lot of people had given up on ever changing our local government. But I would tell people throughout that campaign, I said, look, the actions of your local government have more of an impact on your daily lives than anything that happens in Washington. So this vote really will help change things almost immediately. But you'll love this, Rashawn. So I've got a young lady named Jay that works at Liviana's. She's a server. Great young lady. She's new wife, new mother. But I said, Jay, you really need to vote in this campaign. You need to vote yes to get the mayor vote. She said, I never vote because, my vote doesn't make a difference. But 2 nights later, I stopped in and she goes, guess who's voting? And so now she's like convincing her friends. But so now I think 52% of the American electorate is either millennial or Gen Z. So young people have the power to do this, particularly at the local level. But that is the biggest block of voters in America now. So, that's huge, So I'm like, but don't think it just has to be at the national level. Political activism and democracy start at your front door.
What is it like when you get that text or that call from someone saying like, hey, like you influenced me, like I'm going to do it. I'm going to register to vote, not necessarily going one way or another, but just seeing that you had an impact.
No, it's so great. So I spoke, as I mentioned, at Georgia College for their annual leadership forum. So it was a group of about 100 students in the program. And it was interesting because I think 80% were female probably. But so I engaged with the small group and then went to the big room and then had dinner with the smaller group. But the next day, the gentleman that heads up the program said, you know what, I guarantee some of those kids, those students, will run for office because you asked them to. And so it feels very good. But that's the thing is that, I'm trying to get your generation in decision-making positions, not just in politics, in every sector, more quickly, because we need a new generation of leaders, frankly. We need a new generation focused on servant leadership, because so much of what we see in the corporate world or in politics, it's money and power, and that is not servant leadership to me. There is good leadership, but unfortunately what we see in the mainstream media, it's like they cover the worst of the worst. And in politics, it's basically like we reward bad behavior. That is not leadership, and that happens on both sides of the aisle.
How would you define servant leadership?
It's not putting yourself on a pedestal. Sometimes I've said, when I said I was going to run for mayor, people said, why do you want to get involved in all that? So I'm 37 years old. I said, because I know that if nobody tries to change something, it's not going to change. But it's putting the needs of others in front of your own needs. So it was not the most glamorous thing. It was great at times to be mayor, but it puts pressure on your family. My wife, when you get attacked in the media, that's not fun. But it's doing the hard work. But it's focusing on the needs of the majority, not the minority. So often the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So it's who's ever the loudest, gets their way. And I'm like, I would say when I was in office, if that's like you giving in to your kid every time they throw a temper tantrum, and if you're going to lead in that way, what type of organization will you build? What kind of a city will you build? So it's just this letting the tail wag the dog. That is not servant leadership. You cannot lead to the extremes. Leadership is about the road down the middle. And so 87% of Americans are sick of toxic political polarization. Who in elected office is speaking for them?
And speaking of the media, we mentioned earlier about just how the digital world is so impactful. How do you think that impacts just people when it comes to politics?
I think it's very misleading. So I'm with a national nonprofit called Starts With Us that's trying to get the nation away from toxic political polarization. There are 500 organizations nationwide doing that, doing a great job. But I went down to our farmers market for a film series that we did called Starts With Us on the Street. So I interviewed people on a Saturday at the farmers market for 5.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Is America divided? Why? And all this. But the answer, we did the same thing in San Francisco and San Antonio. But people are like, we don't want to be divided. It's the media that's dividing us. It's politicians that are dividing us. And it is when all we see in politics are the extremes, and in the media, that gives the appearance that our nation is more divided than it really is. That's an illusion, because if you go out in any place and engage at the grassroots level, you can see and feel that. You don't feel all this division, but if you're just sitting around watching one of the major news outlets, they're biased. I mean, that's skewing your worldview, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm also curious to hear your takes for those who may be new to Augusta or haven't participated in a vote or election yet. Like, what would be some of the best starting points for them if they want to get more involved and they want to become more educated? What tips would you have for them there?
I'd say just volunteer to begin with. There are lots of organizations looking for volunteers, but I was talking to somebody about this last night, and so for newcomers to the community, so it's often in fundraising efforts that like the same 10 people get hit up on everything. So there's donor fatigue. But so I was talking to one of those donors last night, but I said, we live in a metropolitan statistical area of like 650,000 people. How many people out there are not being asked to be on a board of directors, to give to a certain cause? And so that's, to me, so other communities do it, but we sometimes retread the same people board after board. I'm like, if you're new to the area, call me. Call me and I will find a place for you to get plugged in. My number is 706-825-6314.
I love that. What other opportunities do you think there are for those who are just curious about getting more involved, whether it be socially or politically, in the Augusta area?
As I say, there are all sorts of opportunities. I would just say there's a website, I believe, called Volunteer Augusta. So you can find a place to plug yourself in and just get out there and get to know the community. So people have historically portrayed Augusta as racially divided. I don't think that that's the case. I think seeing the vote to give our mayor win with 74% shows that people will go to an alternative. But really, Arts in the Heart of Augusta is my favorite festival. So people are saying, oh, we're divided. I'm like, an arts and cultural festival in downtown Augusta that now draws over 100,000 people to celebrate diversity and different ethnicities, different nationalities. It's beautiful. I'm like, that is the Augusta that I see. It is diverse. It's beautiful, and we have never had in over 20 years. It might be 30 years. We've never had an incident at that festival. So don't just look at what you see with our Augusta Commission. Look at what's going on in the broader based community. But I would say to newcomers, be curious, because there is so much to love about that community. But be curious and go out and find what you love about it.
When you were a little boy growing up, did you ever see yourself getting involved in the public service or politics?
I really did not. So my great uncle always said that I was going to be president of the United States of America.
Okay.
And so I got elected president of my fourth grade class. So I was so proud to tell my great uncle that. But I thought, I grew up wanting to be, I painted, I wrote. I wanted to write for a magazine. And so then I'm 50 something years old and finally get to publish my first book. But I've always in my life sort of lived it in a different way, going where I see the most need. And so, like running for mayor, I didn't ever see myself doing that. And I tell people it's kind of like I lead a Forrest Gump life. I mean, I end up in places I'm like, what am I doing? My book is up on a billboard in Times Square. How does that happen? But it's pretty cool. And I think as you live your life, if you're just open to possibilities, life can lead to great places that you never would have expected.
I definitely think so. Even with, I was telling you earlier, with my career here, like I never thought podcasting would be
Yeah.
part of my career path, but just, being open-minded, you definitely have opportunities come your way.
Well, there's an old saying that says, a mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. And, I said that I was young and naive when I ran for mayor at 37. And somebody corrected me, a leadership guru internationally. He said, no, you weren't jaded. And so I think the longer that we can look on the world with a childlike wonder, and I pray for that every day. I'm like, Lord, let me view the world with childlike wonder and awe of the majesty and not be childish.
What would you say are some of your, dreams or aspirations you would like to see for the city of Augusta?
Oh gosh, I want to see Augusta continue to grow. I want to see downtown grow. I mean, we've got so much potential. As I say, while I was in office, we built the convention center, the law enforcement center, judicial center, and everything. I want to see more private investment down there because you look at, and I think now that the mayor has a vote, they can get some consensus around, what do we want to do? Do we want to focus on downtown? You go to Greenville, you go to Spartanburg, every place realizes that we want to have the best downtown, but the way our government was structured, it was basically pitted commissioners against each other that, well, if you do something there, you got to do something here. And I'm like, that tit for tat does not work. And we have the third level of the canal and the Savannah River. Other communities would kill for one water feature. We've got two. So I think downtown is just going to burst forward. I think Mayor agrees with me on that. He's a good man and a great mayor. And we made such a good team because I told him I helped recruit our mayor, Garnett Johnson, to run for mayor. And I told him, when you get elected, you don't owe me anything. All I want is a mayor that I can be proud of. And he has done that, And that's what I think. Basically, every elected official ought to see themselves as a public servant, exercise humility, and realize that they're there to serve others. So I think Augusta's best days lie ahead. I hope that my 9 years helped sort of lay a foundation for that. But no, I think downtown is really going to burst forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited with all of the things that are currently in the works to happen downtown, but also, like you said, the future of what downtown could look like. Like you said, there's a lot of potential there.
Well, and I think sometimes local government had become a distraction. People tended to focus on that. I'm on the board of the Augusta Economic Development Authority, and about 2 or 3 months ago, in 1 week, we had 3 major economic development announcements totaling $1.2 billion with a B dollars. And I'm like, so we're already succeeding, but as we start to straighten out our local government, as it starts to function better, but $1.2 billion in a week, what do you not like about that?
That's a big number.
That is a big number.
Do you have any other final thoughts for our listeners, especially students who may be listening to this episode?
I do. Just be hopeful. Don't get so distracted by what you see in social media, by the media. Go out and experience life. There's so many good things happening, and that's what I'm always trying to shine a light on that because I think part of good leadership is providing people with hope. And there are things to be hopeful for out there, but really, be hopeful, be positive, lead in a positive way, and just believe that you can change your communities because you can, and just get out there and be a part of the world around you.
I love that. Thanks so much for coming here chatting with me, and hopefully you'll be back so that way we can kind of continue this conversation.
Anytime, man, anytime. In a positive way, and just believe that you can change your communities because you can, and just get out there and be a part of the world around you.
I love that. Thanks so much for coming here chatting with me, and hopefully you'll be back so that way we can kind of continue this conversation.
Anytime, man, anytime.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Deke. I really did because, like I said, definitely out of my wheelhouse. I'm not a politics person, but I felt really good talking to him and helping me understand and also just kind of getting some insights on the things that are happening within the city of Augusta. Because even though some people feel like we're small, I like to call us a medium-sized city. So it's really cool to see him be so active and engaged and really passionate about the city, even now that he's necessarily no longer the mayor, but he's still doing some really cool things and impactful things. So whether you aspire to be an activist or just wanting to be a little bit more active politically and socially within the local level, feel free to check out all the things. He does consulting. He gave you his number for you to reach out to him. So use it, talk to him. And if you like this episode, talk to me. Let me know. So follow us on our Instagram, talk to us on all of the different platforms to comment. Tell us what you enjoyed about this episode and tell us if this is going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable being more involved politically. So I'm curious to hear those things. And until then, I will see you guys in the next one. Go Jags!